We gather here today as members of a historic alliance, an alliance that saved and changed the world. You know, when this conference began in 1963, it was in a nation, actually it was on a continent, that was divided against itself. The line between communism and freedom ran through the heart of Germany. The first barbed fences of the Berlin Wall had gone up just 2 years prior. And just months before that first conference, before our predecessors first met here in Munich, the Cuban Missile Crisis had brought the world to the brink of nuclear destruction. Even as World War II still burned fresh in the memory of Americans and Europeans alike, we found ourselves staring down the barrel of a new global catastrophe. One with the potential for a new kind of destruction, more apocalyptic and final than anything before in the history of mankind. The time of that first gathering, Soviet communism was on the march. Thousands of years of Western civilization hung in the balance. At that time, victory was far from certain. But we were driven by a common purpose. We were unified not just by what we were fighting against. We were unified by what we were fighting for. And together, Europe and America prevailed. And a continent was rebuilt. Our people prospered. In time, the East and West blocks were reunited. A civilization was once again made whole. That infamous wall that had cleaved this nation into two came down, and with it, an evil empire. And the East and West became one again. But the euphoria of this triumph led us to a dangerous delusion that we had entered, quote, the end of history, that every nation would now be a liberal democracy, that the ties formed by trade and by commerce alone would now replace nationhood, that the rules-based global order, an overused term, would now replace the national interest, and that we would now live in a world without borders where everyone became a citizen of the world. This was a foolish idea that ignored both human nature and it ignored the lessons of over 5,000 years of recorded human history. And it has cost us dearly. In this delusion, we embraced a dogmatic vision of free and unfettered trade, even as some nations protected their economies and subsidized their companies to systematically undercut ours, shuttering our plants, resulting in large parts of our societies being deindustrialized, shipping millions of working and middle-class jobs overseas, and handing control of our critical supply chains to both adversaries and rivals. We increasingly outsourced our sovereignty to international institutions while many nations invested in massive welfare states at the cost of maintaining the ability to defend themselves. This, even as other countries have invested in the most rapid military buildup in all of human history and have not hesitated to use hard power to pursue their own interests. To appease a climate cult, we have imposed energy policies on ourselves that are impoverishing our people, even as our competitors exploit oil and coal and natural gas and anything else, not just to power their economies, but to use as leverage against our own. And in a pursuit of a world without borders, we opened our doors to an unprecedented wave of mass migration that threatens the cohesion of our societies, the continuity of our culture, and the future of our people. We made these mistakes together. And now, together, we owe it to our people to face those facts and to move forward, to rebuild. Under President Trump, the United States of America will once again take on the task of renewal and restoration, driven by a vision of a future as proud, as sovereign, and as vital as our civilization's past. And while we are prepared, if necessary, to do this alone, it is our preference and it is our hope to do this together with you, our friends here in Europe. For the United States and Europe.
Stop. I think the rest of this, you just pick up yourself. I think this speech was one of the best speeches I have heard from a leader in a very long time. What he's doing is he's closing the book now on what Donald Trump did over at the WEF. WEF, Donald Trump came in as the hammer and said, here it is. Here's what we're doing. Join us or not. Now the statesman comes in and says, listen, let me restate everything. Let me tell you what you feel is not necessarily reality. So let me tell you what you should be focused on. And listen to what he's done. There's a pattern to this speech that is so important, I think, in our everyday lives. You want to convince somebody how to do something, follow the pattern Marco Rubio is following here. Listen to this pattern. He starts with a unifying memory. Then he states the problem. Then he states the intent and the goal. Then he invites people to join. He invokes the memory again and shows the promise that the goal will accomplish if we remember the memory that he started with. Okay? So let me take you through this. He starts with the memory. He reminds the people in the room that NATO didn't appear because leaders liked each other. It formed because they believed at the time the free world may not survive. Hear me. That's why NATO was started. Because they didn't know if the free world could survive without this organization. We're in this situation now, but NATO has become so bastardized, it doesn't even know what it's good for anymore. And Marco Rubio is standing up and saying, hey, you got to remember, because at the beginning, the Cold War, victory wasn't certain. Civilization, Western civilization, felt very fragile. But we stood together because we weren't just fighting communism. We were fighting for something, not against something. How many times have we said, I'm so tired of fighting against. I just would like to fight for something. That's what he's inviting them to do. He's reminding them that at the beginning, we fought for a shared history, a shared culture, a shared faith, shared sovereignty. The idea that people should govern themselves, that we weren't communists, we didn't silence people. And then he argued that we fought for this whole time, but when the Berlin Wall fell, we made a fatal mistake. He calls it the dangerous delusion, the end of history, okay? The belief that the markets would guarantee peace, that everybody was going to be the same in the markets. And it just didn't make any sense when it was said, and you knew it and I knew it, but somehow or another all these people didn't know it, all the leaders of the world, that they believed that national identity could dissolve into some global system. But that's not true. That borders didn't matter anymore, that money didn't matter anymore, that we could deindustrialize ourselves. We could get in bed with our enemies because maybe it was going to be good and we can change them. And then he said something really important. We made these mistakes together. He's invoking the memory because he is saying, look, when we remembered who we were, what we were fighting for, we accomplished great things. Once we forgot, the West became complacent, okay? Victory made the West complacent. And if you listen to what he's really saying here is, we didn't lose our strength because someone conquered us. We lost it because we assumed world history as we know it was over. That was the message in Munich. Because Munich itself, as a city, is a warning label in history. A city forever linked to the cost of denial and wishful thinking. Oh, we can just live side by side with it. You can't. Rubio walked an amazing line. He criticized Europe's direction, weak defense spending, outsourced industry, immigration pressures, but he wrapped the criticism in reassurance. He told Europe, we belong together. We want strong allies. We don't want dependent allies. If we're going to win, we've got to do it together. Now, this isn't accidental here. His mission wasn't to break the alliance. It was to redefine it. Donald Trump came in and said, this is over. Now Rubio is coming in and he's saying, look, that's over. But this is something new. And I warn you, America will go it alone. But we don't want to. He's telling everybody in Europe and any American listening that civilization will only survive when it remembers who it is, what it is. But let me play the last minute and 10 seconds here, because how was it received? For him to get applause is remarkable. For him to get a standing ovation, no one said that was even possible. But listen to the last minute here.
We want to do it together with you, with a Europe that is proud of its heritage and of its history, with a Europe that has the spirit of creation and liberty that sent ships out into uncharted seas and birthed our civilization, with a Europe that has the means to defend itself and the will to survive. We should be proud of what we achieved together in the last century, but now we must confront and embrace the opportunities of a new one. Because yesterday is over. The future is inevitable. And our destiny together awaits. Thank you.
And they begin to stand. Slowly at first, and by the end, everyone in the room is giving him a standing ovation. That was an epic, epic speech. Ricky just asked me a question. Why does it matter? Why does it matter if we're united with Europe? It matters because, as he said in this, we share the same heritage. If we lose Europe, if they lose themselves, we're the last bastion of Western heritage that is standing. And that's not good enough for the world. Western civilization changed the entire world, you know? And what he's trying to invoke there, he's trying to say, look, do you understand where you are in history right now? Do you remember in the Berlin Wall, soldiers staring at each other through rifle sights? Freedom was at stake and people had to stand every day. And if you don't do that, then tyranny wins. But they stood because they remembered the war. They remembered the camps. They remembered the silence that comes when good people convince themselves somebody else is going to handle the danger. That's what happened last time. And because they remembered, they acted. He's begging them, remember who you are. Because memory demands something of you. You know, when you remember, you remember that you've seen this story before. You know where the road leads. And memory doesn't let you pretend that you didn't see the warning signs. Success makes us forget. And that's what he went into. Success, the Berlin Wall coming down. We all believed history was over, and we thought freedom was automatic, and we traded our vigilance for comfort, and we assumed that technology and markets and good intentions could replace courage. And history, patient, relentless history, has stepped up to the plate again, as it always does, and taps us on the shoulder and says, wait a minute, your survival is not guaranteed. And you guys in Europe are going to fall before we do. And that line, one of my favorite lines in the speech is, you have to make the choice. Survival is a choice. It's not inevitable that you survive. It's not inevitable that we fail. It is our choice. And that choice should be enough to wake us up. But is it? The real question remains of whether we're going to remain free if we choose to remember who we actually are. So he was speaking to Europe and did a great job. Let me speak to you. Are you teaching your children who we are? Can you defend the principles that made us free? Do you remember the sacrifices that built the world that all of us inherited? Or are they just old stories that no longer apply? Every generation faces this decision, but we are a generation that doesn't have the family sitting around at the dinner table, forced to listen to the elders at the table tell the stories of where we came from. We've lost so much of this. It's not just the schools, it's our families as well. The generation of World War II chose survival by sacrifice. The generation of the Cold War chose survival with courage and patience. But we, I think, face the toughest of them all because it's comfort. Are we going to live in this denial and slowly come to our demise where we will wake up at the end and we're going to be very uncomfortable in the end? But are we going to wake up out of our comfort and choose freedom? Forgetting is really super easy. That's why I think it's the worst foe we could face. Because forgetting feels compassionate. Forgetting feels modern. It feels safe. But forgetting is how civilizations sleepwalk into decline. Memory is what keeps the lights on. Memory tells us freedom requires limits and responsibilities. Memory tells us the people who built this world were not perfect, but they understood something we risk losing. Survival requires intention.
Thank you for thinking for yourself and being part of a movement, because that's really what all of this is. If you want the full story, you want to go deeper, go to blazetv.com/Glenn. Go there right now, sign up, no interruptions, just the truth, uncensored and unfiltered. Don't just watch, take a stand. And I'll see you over there in a minute.